Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. On Wednesday, during the Ask Me Anything, I ended the show talking about the death penalty. And clearly I did not cover everything, and I'm not necessarily going to, continue answering the question today, but there is a story that I think is very relevant and very fitting to be, the first story that I cover today, following the question about the pros and the cons of the death penalty. And just to sort of give a little background, when I was in high school, I was on the debate team. And one of the things that was a topic of debate for the debate team was about the death penalty. And the way debate team works is you have to be able, instead of just, having a position that you agree with, you have to be able to argue both sides. And I really credit that to, a lot of the ways that I've come around to beliefs that I have, is because I have looked at both sides instead of just looking at, the side that I agree with. And, well, of course, this is the answer because this is what I think. I took really an objective look at various positions and came to what I find to be the correct conclusions. And the death penalty, again, it's one of those things that I don't think is really ever going to wind up being settled, because even if governments abolish the death penalty, you're going to have people that get all upset and say, we need to have taxpayers pay to kill people. And that's something that I didn't really touch on, and I don't really want to get too far into it right now, but the difference between taxpayer-funded capital punishment and vigilante capital punishment. And where is the line between vigilante capital punishment and justified homicide? And that's a question that you really have to answer for yourself. And think about, if you were on a jury and you were presented, any wide range of facts about somebody wound up either killing or raping or doing some other horrible act to someone, and a family member of the person that was the victim wound up killing the perpetrator. They knew beyond, way beyond reasonable doubt. They caught them in the act of doing whatever, and they killed the person. Would that be murder or justified homicide in your mind? And that is that fine line between vigilante justice and state justice. Because with state justice, and I guess I will delve into this a little bit further than I had planned. So with state justice, it's taxpayer funded. Everybody is forced to pay for carrying out the punishment. And vigilante probably is not the correct term, but it's the term that most people would associate with, private justice. In the case of, a family member knows for a fact that, the next door neighbor did something to, one of their family members, and they go and carry out justice themselves. 99.9% of people are going to say, yeah, that's vigilante justice. So that's the term I'm going to use. There's probably a better term, but I'm just going to, use vigilante justice. So with vigilante justice, no one is forcing you to pay for the carrying out of the justice. And if, let's just say, for the sake of this example, that you find out that, let's make it very personal. Your child says that the neighbor did something extremely horrendous. And you decide, you know what? That SOB deserves to die. And you go and you kill your neighbor. But then it turns out that your child lied to you. Well, then you should be held responsible for what you did. And to some degree, the child should be held responsible for basically, causing you to have the reaction that you did. But with state justice, when you have a prosecutor who says that this person did this, and the people of the jury or the judge decides, yep, the prosecutor tells the truth, and why would the prosecutor lie? And they wind up saying that the person is guilty. They put them on death row. The person winds up getting killed. And then it comes up that, the prosecutor faked all of this evidence. They withheld evidence showing that the person did not do the crime. Oops. The prosecutor is never held liable for what wound up happening to the person that was executed. So that, again, is a difference between state justice and vigilante justice. Well, what's happening now that causes me to continue the discussion on the death penalty is that the U.S. Supreme Court granted a stay of execution for a Texas man who has been on death row for 30 years. The article here from UPI says lawyers for Lester Leroy Bauer have appealed his conviction and sentence to the highest court in the United States. Their grounds include the length of time since he was given a death sentence, and they argue that a 30-year wait for execution is cruel and unusual punishment. Bauer, who is now 67 years old, has continued to deny that he killed Bobby Tate, Philip Good, Ronald Mays, and Jerry Brown in an aircraft hangar in 1983 during an attempted hijack of an ultralight aircraft. His lawyers say there is significant lingering doubt regarding his guilt or innocence. The Supreme Court has not yet decided whether or not they will hear the case, but the justices did agree to delay the execution, but they said that the delay would expire if they decide not to hear the appeal. Since he was convicted in 1984, Bauer has had 6 execution dates. His lawyer argues, quote, by any standard, the length of Mr. Bauer's incarceration on death row is unusual and far from anything the framers of the Constitution would have considered acceptable rather than cruel. The lawyers also argue that Texas procedures in death penalty cases in 1984 may have prevented the jury from hearing testimony of Bauer's good character, and that might have mitigated, or rather that might have been mitigating evidence in the sentencing phase, and that prosecutors may have failed to produce evidence that contradicted their own theory that Bauer was guilty. Stay tuned. This is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. There's more when we come back. The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Bitcoin Not Bombs is a launching pad for nonprofits and social entrepreneurs into the financial freedom of the Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin Not Bombs offers premium publicity campaigns designed to facilitate an organization's adoption of Bitcoin as a payment system. Bitcoin Not Bombs is fully committed to being the hub of the nonprofit sector of the Bitcoin economy, maximizing the potential cross-promotion of all our clients and commercial partners. To learn more, visit bitcoinnotbombs.com. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for t-shirts, precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. There's an Amazon shopping iframe built into the website, or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. That's shop.fppradio.com. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So, from the death penalty to giving valor to people that don't deserve it, I am jumping quickly to another story. This from antiwar.com, and it was written by Chad Nelson and published yesterday. Chad Nelson writes, for the last 12 years, NBC's Brian Williams has been publicly recounting a story about being aboard a U.S. Army helicopter in Iraq. Williams was covering the Iraq War on the first day of the American invasion, traveling with the Army's 159th Aviation Regiment. According to Williams, his helicopter was struck by an Iraqi RPG, that's a rocket-propelled grenade, forcing it to make a dangerous emergency landing. Williams has told the story in multiple venues, each time relating the harrowing story of what it feels like to come under enemy assault and to fear possible death. There's a problem, however. Williams' story is not factually correct. It is true, writes Chad Nelson, it is true that Williams was aboard an Army helicopter on the first day of the American invasion, just not on the one that took the rocket-propelled grenade fire. After apologizing for misremembering the incident, not lying, he's not saying, hey, sorry guys, I lied. I misremembered. So Williams apologized for misremembering and admitted that while he was part of the four-part unit, one of which took Iraqi fire, his helicopter was not the one that took a direct hit. His was behind that one. As the story evolves, other Army personnel have said that Williams was in an entirely separate helicopter unit traveling in the opposite direction. The pilot of Williams' helicopter said it did take fire, but only from Iraqi AK-47s. With the details still being sorted out, one thing is clear. Brian Williams is no longer deserving of the public valor heaped upon him for his supposed war heroics. The problem, writes Nelson, with labeling Brian Williams or any other journalist or even soldier who comes under attack during a war a hero is that it glamorizes war's senseless violence. War between feuding governments is insidious and deserving only of scorn. Invading forces who are attacked or injured during a war, as mad as George W. Bush's Iraqi excursion was, are no more deserving of the gallantry attributed to them than the loser of a drunken barroom brawl. Here in America, unfortunately, we live in a perverted reality tunnel within which this senseless violence must be celebrated at all cost. Regardless of our views on war itself, bravery, courage, and honor still manage to apply to those foolish enough to volunteer in even the dumbest and bloodiest of wars. Injured soldiers and war correspondents receive parades, medals, and endless public praise, no matter the circumstances that led to their injury. American war culture is a sickness. By making heroes of those who come under return attack during an aggressive war, we ignore the incredible destruction they bring about in the process. Ron Paul got into hot water in the wake of Chris Kyle's death when he tweeted that Kyle or rather when he tweeted about Kyle that, quote, "Those who live by the sword die by the sword." It's a saying all the more applicable to active duty troops. For one should hardly expect anything less than serious injury or death when he or she ventures out to deliver the same fate to a foreign people. By celebrating the wartime acts of the individuals involved, even where the war itself is almost wholly lacking in public support, the American public reveal themselves as pawns of the warmongers. Backlash against the warmongers becomes all the more difficult where the warmongers can deflect all the criticism as harmful to the troops. Let's face it, there's nothing inherently good about traveling abroad to kill people for your government. Remove this trump card from the politicians' pockets, and they'll have a much tougher sell the next time they decide to engage in such global terror. Now, one thing that strikes, and this is me speaking, the article is concluded, one thing that I find to be very interesting is at one time, people in the military did not want to go to war. It was the people in the military that were the biggest advocates of, hey, let's try to figure out another way to solve this problem. But somehow that all has changed. And now it's the people in the military that are the biggest advocates of, let's go kill people. I used to work with a guy in Texas at a car wash. He had just left the military. I forget which branch, but he had just left. This was back in 2011, right when the whole, let's go bomb Libya thing started to ramp up. And he actually said one day at work, "I hope they call me back. I want to go kill people. Killing people is fun." End quote. And I'm just sitting there thinking, wow, you are messed up in the head. Because here you've got somebody that wants to go fight in a war that is, it's a meaningless war. Like the whole thing in Libya, it was pointless. Oh, we've got to get Gaddafi out of there. Okay, yeah, Gaddafi wasn't exactly the greatest guy ever, but at the same time, he was not, a direct threat to the U.S. military, and that's what the U.S. military is supposed to be for, is, to protect America, not, go nation build and take out dictators. But it seems as though, I would say probably since World War II is when this shift has happened to where, instead of, General Smedley Butler saying war is a racket, you now have people saying, well, let's just go kill everybody. And I don't know why that has happened, other than maybe you're not trying to find the brightest and the best people to join your military. Now you're just trying to find people that will go do your dirty work. If you've ever watched the movie Ender's Game or read the book, I've not read the book, I have watched the movie, you really sort of get to see, it's sort of social commentary in a lot of ways, to where you have the older people who are directing the younger people to go do the fighting on behalf of the older people. And in the final battle, if you will, where Ender is told that it's the final test, and if he passes the test, then he moves up to whatever the next rank is. But it wasn't a test, it was the actual battle. And when he realized that he destroyed an entire planet of peoples, obviously they weren't people, but he destroyed an entire race of beings, he was distraught and crushed. There's more when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Opening a wallet is quick and easy, and for merchants, there are no transaction fees on the first $1 million worth of transactions. All of your funds on Coinbase are safe, with approximately 90% of customer funds being stored offline, and all wallets are stored using AES 256 encryption. To date, Coinbase has more than 1 million consumer wallets and is trusted by over 25,000 merchants, including Overstock.com, Khan Academy, Reddit, and of course, FPP. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. That's coinbase.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and Numery supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month or any amount of Bitcoin per month, thanks to the recurring payment options provided by Coinbase. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's FANS.fppradio.com. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. So, yes, I did give some spoilers to Ender's Game. I should have, said beforehand, spoiler alert. Apologies if you've never seen the film, if I just ruined it for you. But when I get on a roll and I start making analogies and things like, it doesn't come to me to be like, hey, spoiler alert, I'm about to tell you what happens in this movie. But, the book has been out for, 30 years or so? The movie's been out for a long time. But let me, again, just sort of go back and explain what happens at the end of this film. And, even though what, I'm telling you now what happens, it's still a good movie and you should watch it because there is a lot of, subtleties that happen earlier on, and you sort of, get into the mindset, if you will, of what's happening and what's going on. And you're not going to get that with me just telling you, he blows up an entire planet, because he was not told that, hey, we're actually going to go kill this entire race of people. What they're told is this planet invaded Earth back, a long time ago, and we now have to go get our revenge. And so they're training, and he's told, this is the final test, and if you pass this, then you move up to, the next rank, and you're ready for the battle, and then we'll go battle. And so they, pull up this thing that he thinks is a simulator, and he sees the ships just sitting there and waiting. And he's thinking for a second, and the old guy that's, his commander says, what are you doing? You have to act. And so he starts telling the other people on his team or squadron, whatever you want to call it, send out the drones and do this and that, and you've got to clear a path so that we can have this beam go and take out the planet, because the planet is their mothership. And if you take out the mothership, then all of the other things just sort, the worker bees, if you will, they all die. And so that happens, and then it shows, destruction and just everything being decimated on the screen. And he says, why is that in the simulation? And they said, but look, Ender, look what you've done. That, we couldn't tell you that was real because we were afraid that you wouldn't have done it. And that's what really caused him to be distraught, is after he realized that it wasn't a game, that it was real. And he just destroyed this entire race of peoples. But that's, not what happens in America. In America, you have, the worker bees, if you will, that go and they just kill and remote control airplanes and whatnot. And then you've got Private Manning going through, hearing the helicopter pilot says, oh, look at those dead bastards. And something triggers in the brain. hey, wait a second, what am I doing? I have to expose this. And now Private Manning is sitting in jail for the next 35 years because Private Manning tried to expose war for being horrible and basically you've got people in the military who are heartless. They don't care that that's an actual person because in their minds they're playing a game. They're flying a remote control helicopter and they're shooting things in their mind because it's this whole disconnect to where, oh, well, they're not people because, this bad thing happened 13 years ago. We have to get revenge on them. Even though the people that did the thing 13 years ago are dead. The people that allegedly, convinced them to do the thing, they're dead. But, the U.S. government still says, well, we have to get revenge because, they might do something bad again. But what you're really doing, and, this is the whole theory of blowback, which isn't really a theory, but that's what it's called, the theory of blowback. And if you watch the movie Red Dawn, the new one, not the one from the 80s, the new one, they explain blowback in one of the opening scenes of the film. But, of course, most people aren't going to catch it as a description of blowback. So if you get a chance to watch that film, I'll see if I can find a clip on YouTube, put it in the show notes. But it's very telling the way they describe blowback, but most people don't get it because they're talking about America gets their chance to, quote-unquote, be the good guys this time. So, yeah, war and death penalty are two horrible things, and I can talk long times about those. Anything that I have a very strong opinion of, I can talk about at length. But since this is a Friday and the weekend is coming up, I want to share a strange story with you out of Mongolia. A mummified monk was found in Mongolia sitting in what is referred to as the lotus position, which is basically, remember as a kid where you were told in gym class, like, sit Indian style, where it's your legs crossed? So he's sitting with his legs crossed, and his arms sort of, overlapped across one another in front of him, slightly hunched over. It's called the lotus position. It's a yoga position, and it's used for meditation. Well, he was found in the lotus position, and apparently, according to Buddhist officials, this mummy that is approximately 200 years old is not in fact a mummy of a dead person, but it is someone who is in a deep meditative trance. Forensic examinations of the mummified remains are underway at the National Center of Forensics Expertise in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. But, however, Dr. Barry Curzon, who is a Buddhist monk and a physician to the Dalai Lama, said that the mummy was in a rare state of meditation called Tukdam. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's spelled Tukdam. And Dr. Curzon said that the mummy, which is in fact not a mummy because he's not dead, only dead people can be mummified. This individual is in that meditative state of Tukdam and is in the highest state, close to the state of being a Buddha. Dr. Curzon adds, if the person is able to remain in this state for more than 3 weeks, which rarely happens, his body gradually shrinks. In the end, all that remains from the person is his hair, nails, and clothing. Curzon adds, if the meditator can continue to stay in this meditative state, he can become a Buddha. A professor and founder of the Mongolian Institute of Buddhist Arts, and I'm not going to try pronouncing the name, said that the pose of the mummy is, or rather the pose that he is in, symbolizes of the preaching sutra. There's a little bit more to this story that I will share. You can read on your own It'll be in the show notes. This is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.